Rams 2023 draft. Now, as much as we are using this as a preview, I think we need to start a few takeaways from the round one, as the Rams are on tomorrow with that 36th pick. So a lot in stake for the Los Angeles Rams. But first and foremost, your takeaways from round one. We saw a lot of movement, especially at the top of the board.
Yeah, this was a quintessential night one of the draft as far as the Los Angeles Rams are concerned, as far as I've experienced. And what I mean by that is two really good dinners and no picks. Those were world-class sliders.
Oh, yeah.
The French fries were fantastic.
Outstanding.
But compared to previous years, it did feel like the Rams were working hard behind the scenes, doing their due diligence. Probably felt like there were a couple of players, D'Marco, at positions of interest where they had first-round grades, where they would have at least kicked the tires on the possibility of jumping into the action tonight. Ultimately, the story of this calendar year so far has kind of been self-restraint and discipline, and that proved to be the case again tonight.
Well, I guess everyone said no. I mean, they were trying. They were trying to move around, trying to make something happen in the first round. Right. The sliders were great. My takeaway, and we said this almost at the same time, JB, Philadelphia just got scarier.
Yeah, we don't know where that game lands yet, but when they come to SoFi Stadium, they will have plenty of defensive tackles.
You got to be kidding. You added another SEC defensive lineman to that already good defensive line, and you play them this year, so it's going to be a lot of fun. But, yeah, I'm with you. I mean, it was kind of bittersweet. There was movement, not enough. You didn't get the okay to move ahead or move up. So it is what it is. We're right back to where we started before the draft.
Now, considering what you saw tonight, how does maybe your perspective or your own draft board change in terms of what's best available tomorrow?
Man, look, outside linebacker right now. I mean, if you had to play a game tomorrow, you'd be comfortable with starting Matt Stafford, Cam Akers, the offensive line the way it is, even the receiving corps. So you could actually play a game and probably win in the NFL. But some spots you need help. So at the edge spots or defensive ends, outside linebackers, anybody you take tomorrow with that pick probably has a chance to start. But the only problem is there's a quarterback sitting there. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you may have a chance to improve your quarterback room, which is smart for the future. So it's more intrigue for day two for the Rams.
It sounded like you were leaning towards need there.
Always go for need for me.
Really?
I always go for need.
See, I was going to say the opposite. I don't think tonight changed really anything for me. I came into this week hoping for the Rams' sake that with their top selection, or maybe multiple top selections in this draft, they would land on someone who had contract extension potential at a valuable position, at a position that changes wins and losses in the National Football League. Now, that's ambitious, but unlike previous years, I felt like at 36, maybe plus or minus a few, they had that potential. And I still think that's out there when you look at, pick a name, whoever best player available you want to utilize. You're right, there's two quarterbacks in Levis and Hooker there, certainly. There's some potential on the edge. There are some good names at tight end, even in the defensive backfield. I know they addressed that with last year's draft pretty aggressively, doubling up at corner and safety, but I think that potential is still out there early in day two.
And there is some relief that you didn't, try to find your way into the first round because you need so much. You need every pick you can get because, like you said, this team, you need players. You need good players. You're replacing great players with good players. So there will be some opportunities for young guys to come in and play right away, but it just depends on what you think is more important, the future or the right now. I'm more in the right now.
Yeah, but I'm looking for the most elite talent out there.
No doubt.
If I'm putting myself in less need shoes, because there are so many needs, you can't possibly attack them all in this draft and in tomorrow at top round two in particular. But if you can narrow the list of needs with someone who's going to be here 4+ years, I think that puts you on a course to then use some of your other resources, be they in free agency with draft capital, etc., to then go out and get a premier edge rusher at some point in the future.
No doubt. Can't make the cake, but we can get closer. We got the flour and the eggs,
There's been so much conversation in terms of needs and best available, but with this rebuilding model, is there something to be said in terms of needs, maybe not necessarily just even in this season alone, but needs within the near future? And how might that perspective change in terms of this draft?
For me, biggest need for this football team, I guess, is you got to protect your number one asset, and that's Matthew Stafford. So to me, that always wins. If it's between edge, running back, even quarterback, if I've got a pretty good offensive lineman or tackle or whatever sitting there staring me in the face, I could hardly say no, because this will live and die live and breathe with Matthew Stafford throwing the football. So I think that's got to be job number one. So I don't know if that changes the board, what happened in the first round today, but it would definitely still be my first priority.
I'd be surprised, though, if there's a tackle out there that the Rams graded highly enough to jump at early tomorrow. Because that was the first run that I saw when I observed tonight's first round. If you take quarterbacks out of the equation, because they always go first, and there were 3 of them taken in the top 4, the first run was on offensive tackles, 4 in the top 14. So assuming that the Rams had similar opinions of one or multiple of those players, maybe that position in particular doesn't fit at 36.
What was the Oklahoma kid that came off the board? I love that guy.
Did you?
Oh my God, he plays.
Reminded you of Phil Loadhole?
Loadhole. He plays mean, plays nasty, plays for keeps, my type of guy. Yeah.
Now, JB, you actually did an article leading up to this draft, and there was conversation within that saying there could be an argument made that the line itself, the offensive line itself, could maybe be the one with the most depth heading into the season. Can you explain that argument and why you think there is a chance for
I
it?
like to poke the bear and take the position counter to my friend DeMarco Farr. So knowing that he was going to go there, I figured I would take the stance early. No, I think other people have rightly made the comparison to, what was it, the 21 draft, right? Where the Rams kind of bet on themselves and the group that they had in-house. They felt that they had a certain number of starting caliber players with a certain number of starting caliber backups. And that with the lumps they took, especially in the 2019 season, there was a chance to make a quantum leap forward. I don't know if that same opportunity presents itself this year with this group coming back, but I do think they have a certain number of starters, others with promising starting experience. And then Logan Bruss, their top pick from last year, who we just don't know, we haven't seen yet. And the other parallel that I'll draw there is new leadership in that room. There's a new position coach there, just like there was a couple of years ago when they went on their Super Bowl run. Yeah. What there isn't is an Andrew Whitworth.
I don't know why all the Brian Allen hate. I swear I field more questions about him than anybody.
But if you were to rewind time, I think you could draw that parallel. And he went out and had put together a Pro Bowl season and wears a ring on his finger now. So.
You can show me a highlight where he gets knocked back. He's not the biggest center in the world. But what about the other 63 plays where he made the right turn or the right block? It's just funny. But I would take that offensive line outside of the question mark of Logan Bruss. We don't know what we don't know about him just yet.
And let me clarify what I said and what I wrote, which is if the Rams go out and attack the offensive line throughout the second and third round tomorrow, I'm not going to be stunned. But if they do prioritize some other position groups and they say, let's see what a year of experience, a year of much better health, and a year of new coaching staff members might do. And I'll also say, let's see if there's a way that we can adjust our scheme and the way we played in December and January of last year with Matthew Stafford at the controls that makes that offensive line look as productive or maybe more so when we get what we feel like our starting caliber players back in there.
Now, we do have 11 picks slated as of right now. DeMarco, do you potentially see that changing as we get further into this draft?
Yes and no. It just, look, you have so many needs. You want to get as many picks as you can, but like you said, I don't want to. You're trying to restock your football team, so the last thing you want to do is start wheeling and dealing now. And 11 guys to add to 45 still leaves a lot of room left. So if you can add more picks, then so be it. But it just depends on who's available and what you think your priorities are. I know what we think. It just depends on what they think in the draft room.
I hope they have a tough decision to make tomorrow at 36. I hope their phone is ringing off the hook. I hope there's a player they really want to grab right there and say, let's build around this player at this position. But also it sure would be nice to have maybe multiple picks between where we are now and where our third rounders land, because this is a nice vein of our scouting where we feel like there are legitimate contributors to be had as rookies and for several years beyond.
Well, we are looking for several spots for the Los Angeles Rams for 2023, but I also think it's important to note what we do have, 44 players currently on the roster. We need to take a look back to 2022 and see exactly how that draft stock has come up and played at a decent level. We know we had some injuries at that point, but who from the 2022 class has impressed you the most?
Darian Kendrick? Yeah. Looking at the secondary, I was just thinking about, well, obviously Jalen Ramsey's not here, but the guys that are here, still on this roster, played a lot last year. So that's another group that I think if you had to go play tomorrow, you'd feel comfortable starting with Jordan Fuller, Rush East, Darian Kendrick, Kobe Durant. They played a lot. They played meaningful snaps. So, but if you can add a little more spice to that group, if there is a corner that probably fell out of the first round or a secondary guy that's probably not as fast, but has those ball skills, and you can add it to that group, you can make that group potentially special, especially with the coaching staff the way it is with Aubrey Pleasant coming back and coaching the secondary.
I mean, I think Kobe Durant is the easiest answer, the one I'm most confident in. There are some others that I'm intrigued by, but that I wouldn't feel confident stepping out on that ledge and saying definitively now, whether it's Quentin Lake, Russ Yeast you mentioned, but let's also address the fact that it could look different without Jalen Ramsey, arguably the best corner in the game, as a member of that group in terms of what they're being asked to do on any given rep.
Well, without Jalen, I think there is a massive gap in terms of the scheme of this defense, right? Played a really unique position in which touch, feel, read was all at a premium. So the question is, does this defense maybe evolve and change to allow a player to step in and kind of become experienced in that rate? Or are they going to ask somebody to do the same role as Jalen?
We talked about this with Aaron a couple of times. The best and worst thing about Aaron. The best thing about Aaron is he's out there. He's the best player out there. Same with Jalen. The worst thing is you'll never know what's behind him because you're not going to get the reps. He's going to take the starters reps. Everything's going to go through him. The defense is going to be tailored to what he does best. So now there's room for somebody to grow. And trust me, Raheem Morris will find what you do best and then tailor that defense around what you do. So as long as you buy into what he's teaching. So yeah, there's an opportunity for guys to grow into that role. But will you have a Jalen Ramsey overnight? Absolutely not. But what you can do is play hard and fast, just like Jalen Ramsey.
Yeah, I think there will have to be an adjustment based on personnel because there isn't a Jalen Ramsey in this draft, certainly not left in this draft. I know that because if there was, the Rams would have traded 10 picks to go up and use their 11th on that player tonight. So that's just a different direction they're going to have to go. Who can fill that and in what capacity and in what combination? That's what the summer and training camp are for.
Yeah, without a doubt. You especially think back to the secondary and what they're going to be able to put together for the Los Angeles Rams. Now, I think it's also important to note as we head into 2023, what's at stake in terms of this draft? We'll go all the way back. Give me a big picture look in terms of this Les Snead era in terms of this draft.
In terms of how important it is?
Yeah.
I'm resisting the urge to say it's the most important. He did,
Why?
after all, he drafted Aaron Donald, right? And so it's going to be tough to compete with something like that because of everything that's meant to this organization over the last decade, let's say. But I think this draft will eventually set the starting line for the next push of the Rams franchise. And what I mean by that is, depending on your conversion rate, what type of players at what positions you really hit on and find can contribute as rookies and lock down long-term starting jobs. That's going to influence the moves that you make as early as this trade deadline, as early as next free agent period, and certainly when we're in these seats this time next year. If you do really well, I think that starting line moves closer. If you don't capitalize in the way that we're all hoping, maybe it takes another cycle to get to where you're trying to go.
I don't know why. I'm excited. I am geeked. Now, I love coming back to a stock football team. Don't get me wrong. I'd rather have all pros all up and down your roster. But I just love the fact that you get to start over and you get to make the team over in whatever image you want, centered around Matthew Stafford and a few players. But I would bet Sean McVay is excited too, that you get to build and you get to start at the grassroots level and win from there. I think we've seen him do just about everything else. Coach a star-studded football team, take over a football team, turn it around, change the culture within a week or two. Let's see if he can do this. So the one thing we know from doing those coaches shows is I wouldn't want to bet against this guy. And I know what these internet swamis are saying, that there's a bunch of no names on this football team, that it's going to be a down year. We'll see in December. We'll see what happens then. But for the most part, this coaching staff and this front office has got to be excited for the possibilities you have to build a football team from this point.
It's a phrase you use there, coaching staff, because it's not just a new group of Rams players that we're about to be introduced to, but there are 10, 11 new faces on the coaching staff walking around this draft lab right now, anxious to put their fingerprints on this next iteration of the Los Angeles Rams. And yet at the same time, there's continuity in terms of the head coach who calls the plays, his new offensive coordinator who speaks his language, and bringing Raheem Morris back, you could say, was the biggest free agent retention of the calendar year so far.
Well, I think it all comes down to the word perspective. What is your perspective heading into 2023? If your purpose and understanding is that this is rebuild and we are setting up for the future, 2023 turns into an exciting moment for the Los Angeles Rams as well as their fans. So I think that's an important note to keep in mind for all of our Ramley. It's all in the perspective. But let's go with one last question, and this one is a little bit of rapid fire.
Okay.
Wouldn't surprise me if the Rams blinked over the next 2 days. What is your fill-in word, JB Long?
Drafted a backup quarterback.
Wouldn't surprise you with that first pick.
No, I'm not saying that.
Oh,
Just
that
over
wouldn't
the next
surprise
2
me
days.
Over
either.
the next 2 days.
That wouldn't shock me either. Yeah, nothing would surprise me at this point right now. I mean, would anything shock you? With 44 guys on the roster? No.
I think taking the place kicker of your future.
Okay, yeah. Well, that's just
early
crazy.
on Friday
Yeah, that would be surprising.
surprised me.
You're right. Okay, that's fair.
Oh man, well thanks so much for joining us on the post-draft show. This is just day 1, and get this, we've got 2 more days to go. Each evening you'll get a chance to catch up with our lovely Rams studio crew. Les Snead will be on the show tomorrow, and Sean McVay will be joining us on that final draft day. And again, this is the Rams post show, and thanks for joining us at the SoFi Draft Lab.